Welcome to Command HQ. I'm Brock Ferdine. Hey, wanted to do kind of a chill stream. We do have some letters from Ngoran, Alina Haba, Cliff Robert, and Letitia James on deck here. And then we have just a bunch of tweets and a couple of videos to kind of close things out. Nothing too massive. All right, so let's jump into, I forgot which screen here. Oops. I actually have not looked at these at all. So these are new filings in the Manhattan civil fraud case involving President Trump. And Ngoran put this email on the public docket. And we will see what it says. So again, I haven't read any of this. This is my first initial reaction to this stuff. This came out on Monday, February 5th. Dear counselors, this is probably written by your girl Allison Greenfield, but as you are undoubtedly aware, in an article in the February 1st, 2024 online edition, as to pick out the online edition of the New York Times, headline Trump's former finance chief in negotiations to plead guilty to perjury, William K. Rashbaum, Jonah E. Bromwich, and Ben Protess write that defendant Alan Weisselberg is negotiating a deal with Manhattan prosecutors that would require him to plead guilty to perjury. What's more, he, quote, would have to admit that he lied on the witness stand in the case pending before me and during a pretrial interview plaintiff conducted. A deposition. As the presiding magistrate, the trier of fact, and the judge of credibility, I, of course, want to know whether Mr. Weisselberg is now changing his tune and whether he is admitting he lied under oath in my courtroom at this trial. Although the Times article focuses on the size of the Trump Tower penthouse, his testimony on other topics could also be called into question. Remember, the size of the penthouse was kind of an issue of contention, and it was really the only thing that was ever admitted that was, and it wasn't really fraudulent. It was more of a mistake in listing the size, the square foot size of the penthouse. I think it was overstated by, 700-800, maybe. I think it was overstated by like 2,000 square feet. I also may use this as a basis to invoke falsus in uno. As the article notes, perjury, particularly in a high-profile trial, undermines the broader ends of justice and cannot be ignored. All right, there's no citation here, by the way. I do not want to ignore anything in a case of this magnitude. By Wednesday at 5 p.m., please submit as officers of the court a letter to me detailing anything you know about this that would not violate any of your professional ethics or obligations. I would also appreciate knowing how you think I should address this matter, if at all, including the timing of the final decision. Thank you, Justice Ngoran. Okay. Well, I mean, you have Hobo Judge Ngoran admitting that he is delaying the decision in this case based on Weisselberg's negotiations with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Where's Weisselberg's name in here? Right here. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting, and it's important news. What is the strategy behind Weisselberg pleading guilty here to potentially perjury, and how that impacts the Manhattan civil fraud trial, because it is material? Well, I think it's a strategy to delay the issuance of this decision, first of all. And I think the other thing here that's important is that the New York Times is actually getting involved like it always does in these cases where it's leaking information and then it's using it as kind of the fifth column here in this court case. And the other thing here is that Engoron mocked Breitbart, yet he is giving, extensive credibility to the New York Times. He's allowing the New York Times to interfere in this case. Let's move on to the responses. Now we have Letitia James' response, and then we have Cliff Roberts, and then Alina Habba. Okay, it's appearing on screen. I think, yes. Okay, good. This is today, February 7th, before 5 p.m., as Hobo Judge Engoron ordered or suggested. Dear Justice Engoron, on behalf of the Office of Attorney General, OAG, we write in response to the court's request for a letter addressing news reports of plea negotiations between Allen Weisselberg and the Manhattan DA's office regarding his potential perjurious testimony during the trial in this action and the investigation that preceded it. At this time, we are not involved in any negotiations and are unaware of what specific trial testimony may be the subject of the plea negotiations or whether Mr. Weisselberg has conceded that he falsely testified. Other attorneys within OAG have been cross-designated to the District Attorney's Office on other matters, including some involving Mr. Weisselberg. And so this response is limited to the knowledge of the attorneys that tried this case before Your Honor. Now, why are they saying that? Well, they want to address the ethical concerns first, meaning that they're not tainting the criminal case. And that they have, this Chinese firewall built between the prosecutors working, potentially assisting the Manhattan District Attorney's Office from the State Attorney General's office. And they don't want any of this information to taint the attorney generals who prosecuted this case. The Attorney General's office does not, however, believe that this development should result in any delay of a final decision. See, that's the other thing. They want to make sure they get this decision quickly. And they're tacitly implying that Weisselberg's admission that he perjured himself is a trial tactic to delay the final decision in this matter. Now, whether Weisselberg actually perjured himself or not is a wholly different matter. And I believe that Weisselberg is likely just admitting to perjury as a strategy, not necessarily because it's true. Weisselberg is admitting to it, and therefore it will be true if Weisselberg admits to it and theoretically pleads guilty, and that information comes out. And you realize that this is the perfect timing to do this, right when this final decision is going to come out. You want to delay this final decision as long as you possibly can if you're President Trump and if you're the Trump organization, for several reasons. First of which is that you're never going to delay this final decision before any of these trials take place, because there's going to be no criminal trials for President Trump before the election. We already know that. Chutkin's case is delayed. And that's a really effective strategy by Trump's legal team. And that's really the only card they have up their sleeve. The court has already found defendants liable for violating Executive Law 63-1. The court should hold them to account and impose necessary measures to prevent further fraud, including industry bars and the appointment of a monitor, Barbara Jones, with robust oversight as soon as possible. Well, they already have the monitor, so they just want more powers. They want to break up the Trump organization. when it sold Trump Tower. If additional sanctions are necessary to address any potential perjury, the court can retain jurisdiction to address those issues. And there's a citation here. Indeed, given the prospective relief sought here, including affirmative injunctions and close oversight by an independent monitor, the court will be able to further tailor any relief to account for any developments that may arise as a result of the perjury investigation. It's interesting they use the term investigation here. I think that's planned because there isn't a final plea deal. And I don't know how, there's probably attorneys talking to each other here. There's probably Weisselberg's attorney talking to Trump's legal team, and they're doing this through the shield of attorney-client privilege. Therefore, the state can't claim that they're obstructing justice or anything like that. And if the potential perjury at issue proves to be expansive and calls into question the veracity of testimony from other witnesses and defendants, then the court could revisit the judgment on a motion pursuant to CPLR 5015. There's a citation here. Further delay in the final resolution of this proceeding, pending the outcome of a perjury proceeding, is unnecessary for a number of reasons. First, the record already demonstrates that exculpatory testimony from Mr. Weisselberg cannot be relied upon. So they're trying to limit the addition of Weisselberg's statements that potentially would benefit the Trump organization, exculpatory testimony, which is interesting. And the other thing here is maybe they'll do it further down, but they haven't stated what specific statements, like in bullet point form, would be exculpatory to the Trump organization. His testimony about his purported lack of involvement in tripling the size of the triplex penthouse apartment was contradicted by contemporaneous documents and the testimony of Kevin Sneeden. Likewise, his testimony on other subjects, like his severance agreement or whether or not Patrick Burney reported to him, was simply not credible. Citation here. His prevarications on those subjects are sufficient to invoke falsus in uno, regardless of whether they also support a criminal prosecution of perjury. As the Second Circuit has observed, although it is undoubtedly the case that a good many untruthful statements occur during the course of a civil trial, many such falsehoods essentially are resolved by adverse verdicts, leaving for criminal prosecution those few instances where a witness's lies is so material to the truth-seeking function of a trial that the prosecutor, sometimes upon referral of the trial judge, elects to seek an indictment. Let's break this down. Let's unpack this. Okay, so they're saying that, based on all of the other facts, that Weisselberg's situation should not materially impact this trial and the final decision. So too here, the primary means to resolve any issues arising from defendant's reliance on perjurious testimony is a finding of liability and the imposition of relief authorized by the executive law. Potential further remedies through the criminal process need not delay that level of resolution. Second, it's a long letter here. Might not be able to get through the whole thing. It's going to take a long time. I didn't realize, again, I didn't read this beforehand, so I didn't realize that it was, 9 pages here? So what you can see here is that Letitia James is raging at President Trump. Raging. Second, if Weisselberg did commit perjury, this court does not need to await the outcome of a criminal proceeding to resolve the issue. To the contrary, if counsel learns that their client has offered false material evidence, they have an affirmative obligation to take reasonable remedial measures, including, if necessary, disclosures to the tribunal. Rule 3.3, the rules of professional conduct. If there are facts known to any defense counsel establishing that Weisselberg committed perjury, such counsel is obligated to disclose those facts, even if privileged, and even if it exposes Weisselberg to prosecution for perjury. That's not true. As described in a formal opinion from the Association of the Bar of the City of New York. Now, that's absolutely false. If a defense attorney has knowledge that their client committed perjury, they are not obligated under the rules to notify the state, prosecutors, the opposing party, the trial court at all. However, you can see that Letitia James will try hard. She'll list out Rule 3.3 and rage about why there are rules here that necessitate the disclosure of potential perjury. So what they're trying to blame shift here. They're trying to say, well, it was Alina Habba and Cliff Roberts and Chris Keiss. They had to tell us, before this whole situation started to ramp up with Weisselberg, that Weisselberg committed perjury. Like, how would they know that Weisselberg committed perjury, for one, during his testimony? I mean, it takes time to figure these things out, right? Hence, any facts demonstrating that Weisselberg testified falsely must be disclosed to the court if known to be false by defendant's counsel, regardless of any pending perjury investigation or plea negotiations. And that disclosure should occur immediately without the need for any delay of the resolution of this proceeding. Now, what's interesting here is that how often do prosecutors disclose that they're lying or that they're fabricating or falsifying evidence? How often do they tell the trial court? They never do. They never do. That evidence will come out years later. Third, there should be no further delay as a result of this development because there is no fixed period of time for any potential perjury issues to be resolved. Negotiations over a potential plea agreement could go on indefinitely. That's true, and it should in this case. I mean, it should take years, I guess, until maybe, November 5th, 2024, even better, January 20th, 2025. If Mr. Weisselberg and the district attorney's office do not reach agreement, a trial on any potential perjury charges would take even longer. So this is a really, really effective strategy by Weisselberg. He is slow playing potential plea negotiations, and then he's going to say, nah, that's all right. Let's just go to trial. And then getting to the trial will take 6 months in New York. I mean, they'll try and fast track it because, they've allocated all resources in New York to persecute President Trump and anyone who supports President Trump. But even so, Weisselberg will slow play it until the election. And delaying the final determination in this action to await the outcome of plea negotiations would have the perverse effect of rewarding defendants if Weisselberg is indeed guilty of perjury. So they're being careful about stating whether it's material or whether it's a fact that Weisselberg actually did commit perjury because they want this decision to come out. They want it to come out. Plus, there's ethical issues here by declaring that Weisselberg committed perjury without actually having a plea deal in place or some finding of fact stating that defendants would have been able to delay their final judgment, including on a cause of action decided on summary judgment by relying on perjured testimony. Okay, so there's exhibits here beyond just the regular letter. In sum, the fact that a defendant who lacks credibility and has already been to prison for falsifying business documents may have also perjured himself in this proceeding or the preceding investigation is hardly surprising. If true, what do you mean hardly surprising? You're the guys who threw Weisselberg in prison. If true, he should be held to account fully for his actions, but it should not delay a final. So they're really, serious about making sure that this decision is not delayed, as I've said 10 times here. Final decision and judgment imposing remedial measures in this law enforcement proceeding. Now, the final kind of wording here in this sentence, law enforcement proceeding, it's a quasi enforcement proceeding actually, because technically it's a civil case. However, it has the subsequent and consequential bearing that this becomes, a criminal law enforcement action to the extent that some of this stuff is referred. Obviously, they've gone after Weisselberg. They've thrown Weisselberg in prison. I mean, with the limited information I have about Weisselberg, it sounds like Weisselberg has tried to protect President Trump. Now, I could be a little bit wrong here or there. I mean, these things get very, very difficult to analyze because there's so many moving parts to it. Whereas I think some others kind of cucked out. And Kevin Wallace, Senior Enforcement Counsel, Economic Justice. Now, this is the SJW Division, Social Justice Warrior of Letitia James, Attorney General's office. So then we have a couple attachments here. Let's look at those. Okay. We got just, emails, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Sidebar today. Okay, so the sidebar emails, which probably were never put on the public docket, they were trying to keep this stuff, kind of concealed from the public, these sidebars. And they were doing it on October 12th, meaning that they kind of were aware that Weisselberg was negotiating a plea deal for perjury. I don't have the date that Weisselberg testified in this case. Could be right before this. Okay, let's look at, now we've seen, well, there's one more here. No, is there? No, it's just white space. Let's look at Cliff Roberts' response here. Then we got Alina Habba up next. All right, good. Showing up perfectly on stream. Law Offices of Robert and Robert. February 7th. Dear Justice, hobo judges should be hobo judge and Goron. We write in response to Your Honor's email of February 5th, 2024, requesting that counsel submit as officers of the court a letter detailing anything we know about. Okay, so those previous attachments may not have been in discussing any knowledge about Weisselberg. A New York Times article concerning Weisselberg, citation to the article. The article speculates about purported plea negotiations involving Mr. Weisselberg and the New York County District Attorney's Office regarding unspecified allegations of perjury. So that's what I kind of hit on with Letitia James in her letter, she did not specify kind of in bullet points what statements by Weisselberg amounted to perjury. So that's exactly what I think Cliff Roberts keyed in on here. And I think that's extremely important because you'd have to be able to articulate or particularize specific statements that were potentially perjury. The article simply does not provide any principled basis for the court to reopen the record or question the veracity of Mr. Weisselberg's testimony in this case. Indeed, we respectfully submit that the court's request for comment on this speculative media account is unprecedented, inappropriate, and troubling. I agree. But Cliff Roberts is kind of playing like he doesn't have, he doesn't know, like, I have no idea what's going on, but obviously Cliff Roberts knows exactly what's going on. But he's playing stupid, even though he's not. First, after more than 3 years of investigation, millions of pages of documents produced in discovery, countless depositions, and a 3-month trial, the record in this case is closed. The only evidence that the court can consider in rendering its decision is that adduced during the trial, and then there's a citation here, yada, yada, yada. Now, I think Cliff is going to try and throw one more argument in here why Engoron should kind of either, dismiss this case or render a decision that is favorable to President Trump. To the extent the attorney, even though it won't work, to the extent the Attorney General had any concerns regarding the veracity of the testimony of Weisselberg, who was called to testify by the Attorney General. So I think what's happening here too, as I read this, and again, this is my first reaction. I haven't done any previous reading of these letters. This is just initial analysis, is that the Attorney General's office, Letitia James, is accusing Cliff Roberts and Alina Habba of having knowledge that Weisselberg committed perjury and using it as a trial strategy to delay the final decision. And so Cliff Roberts has to play stupid in his response. Solely as part of her case, the time to raise those concerns was prior to the close of evidence and are now waived. Second, the court lacks the legal authority under New York law to take judicial notice of news stories. I think this is a fantastic argument. I think this kind of plays into a lot of the shenanigans involving New York media and the court system. We have evidence that Allison Greenfield, for example, leaked a bunch of information to reporters about me, false information, in order to, harass me, target me, subject me basically to domestic terrorism. And, this is a pattern that's existed in New York, specifically the Manhattan Supreme Court, for a very, very long time. They've done this to many celebrities. They just did it to Robert De Niro, actually, in his divorce. And De Niro got so angry and upset that, remember, he showed up to the Manhattan Supreme Court when Justice Matthew Cooper was presiding over his case, and he almost ran over a couple paparazzi. He was so angry. But of course, it was De Niro, so nothing happened to him. There's a lot of issues here with the media in New York, and not to say that this happens in other parts of the country, but it seems to be kind of like a primetime issue, no pun intended, for New York, because, New York is kind of the seat of tabloid journalism. In addition, we got the Daily, we got the New York Post. The New York Post is basically read by the entire country. It's the oldest newspaper in the country. In addition, the court certainly, quote, should not be encouraging sloppy practice by taking judicial notice of factual matters that a party unaccountably fails to supply before the Nisus Prius court. Citation. A New York Times article ineluctably does not satisfy the test for judicial notice and cannot be considered by the court. Third, consideration by the fact finder of matters outside of the records, especially speculative news accounts, is simply improper and calls into question the impartiality of the court. Whereas here, the court function. This is fantastic. I love it. That's exactly what I mean. And, you know, not just, you know, my personal sort of narcissism involving what happened to me, because clearly, you know, I, just like any other individual, I view life through my own lens. But just outside of the scope of what happened to me, where they tried to falsely charge me with crimes, and then, you know, minutes later, literally dismiss those charges because of Allison Greenfield's shenanigans. It shows that the court is incredibly biased and prejudiced against the Trump organization. And I think that's the most important takeaway from this entire thing. And, you know, regardless of what you think about President Trump and the Trump organization, they've been doing this to so many different litigants. And the fact that they can get away with this means that they can do this to anyone without any accountability whatsoever. It's not like the Judicial Commission in New York is going to hand down, you know, any discipline to Allison Greenfield or Hobo Judge Engoron or anyone associated with this case. You know, they can do anything they want. They're basically like feudal lords. Whereas here, the court functions as fact finder. The apparent willingness to not just review, but even consider reliance on unsubstantiated news reports and rendering its decision raises significant concerns. Yes, it does. Totally agree, Cliff. Fourth, the application of falsus in uno to Mr. Weisselberg's testimony at trial based on a news story is especially troubling in this case. So this is the Latin term for perjury, falsus in uno. Making false statements knowingly. As the court is well aware, the Attorney General's witness, Michael Cohen, admitted to having perjured himself before the late Judge William Pauley III, federal judge, and in fact, perjured himself in the immediate view and presence of this court. Exclamation mark. Thus, it is inconceivable that the court would not apply falsus in uno to Mr. Cohen's testimony while musing on its applicability based on a speculative news story. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Love it. This is fantastic. I can't read the sentence. Finally, defendants' counsel are well aware of their ethical responsibilities pursuant to the New York Rules of Professional Conduct. Court's directive that as, quote, officers of the court, unquote, counsel detail anything known about this matter that would not violate counsel's professional ethics or obligations is simply another way of expressing the principle that New York lawyers are subject to New York's attorney ethic rules. Consistent with their ethical responsibilities, defendants' counsel will not make any statements concerning rumors of any kind involving Mr. Weisselberg. Should the court have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Respectfully submitted, Cliff Robert. I mean, that's throwing a strike right there. That's, you know, that's like, you know, 4th and 12 and Tom Brady, you know, hitting Randy Moss for a first down. Not that it's going to win the game, because clearly Hobo Judge Engoron is going to rule against the Trump organization, but it is throwing a strike through the defenses of the court. I'm using a football analogy. I don't mean that in any other connotation whatsoever, just in case anybody's listening. Now let's look at what Alina Habba had to say. Habba Madeo, February 7th. Hobo Judge Ngoron. This letter is submitted in response to an email correspondence dated February 5th, 2023. So this is wrong. Wherein Your Honor referred to a recent New York Times article entitled Trump's former finance chief in negotiation to plead guilty to perjury. Now, sure, Alina saw this after filing and was just like, oh, fuck. Typo on the date, but I just did that in another filing. And I was like, oh, whatever. I did that in a filing before the Wisconsin Supreme Court last week. And I was like, oh, fuck, why did I mess the date up? But anyways, it's, everyone does that when the year changes. The Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, speaking of Allison Greenfield, in a letter in support of Dean Phillips' ballot access, I submitted an amicus letter, and Chief Justice Ziegler of the Wisconsin Supreme Court totally agreed with me when I explained in full detail what Allison Greenfield and Hobo Judge Ngoron did in this case. And so, speaking of criminal investigations, the U.S. Attorney's Office should really start investigating Allison Greenfield for the fact that she has leaked information deliberately in an attempt to basically engage in domestic terrorism against me, and more importantly, obviously, as I just mentioned, to prejudice these cases against President Trump and ultimately to interfere in an election. That is totally beside the point here. And requested that counsel for both sides disclose anything we know about this that would not violate any of our professional ethics or obligations, and provide a recommendation as to how Your Honor should address this matter, if at all, including the timing of the final decision. Now, this is totally from Allison Greenfield. This is not Hobo Judge Ngoron writing that. Hobo Judge Ngoron could probably barely type on a keyboard. Probably like a monkey, He's busy, He's busy getting drunk. Living like a hobo on the street. So many illegal immigrants in New York now that cohabitate with Hobo Judge. As Your Honor is aware, my office represents Mr. Weisselberg. In the instant civil litigation, we do not represent him in connection with any criminal matters. I have not spoken with the New York District Attorney's Office about any of the matters discussed in the New York Times article. Further, in an abundance of caution, I have conferred with my ethics counsel. Interesting. And have been, so there's a ethics line, typically. Occasionally, especially I think in New York, there's an ethics line that lawyers can call in and kind of like figure some of these thorny ethical issues out. And since Habba is really in the deep end here, she probably has a retainer with an ethics counsel. And this also ties into the fact that Kevin Doyle, disciplinary attorney from the Attorney Grievance Committee in New York, led by Jorge Del Pico, has probably started some sort of investigation and maybe has some private admonishment for Alina Habba, and is probably trying to suspend and or disbar, unfortunately, Alina Habba. That's why, like any lawyer that deals with President Trump typically gets disbarred or suspended, as you've seen with Rudy Giuliani, you've seen with Sidney Powell, you've seen with Kenneth Chesebro. Alina Habba is a unique case, and Alina Habba therefore has an ethics counsel. And I have a Kevin Doyle video coming up, so we have a good moat, a defense around Alina Habba coming up, so don't you worry. We have a lot of evidence and information about Kevin Doyle that will be released shortly. and have been advised that I am constrained by my professional ethical obligations from providing any further detail. That's a good idea. No adverse inference should be drawn from my inability to respond. So an adverse inference in a civil case is kind of like pleading the fifth. I'm sure that there's an attorney out there named Kajon Breyer who had me on the stand once, and they didn't subpoena me to testify, but I was ordered to testify by a corrupt referee in Minnesota a couple of years ago in a case. And, they were trying to get as much information out of me as possible, and I would not answer a single question. And I think, I've never testified in any of these cases because the more that you testify, the more road, the more runway you give them, the more sort of attack vector you give these corrupt attorneys to go after you with. So I think that's a good idea, Alina, not to testify. Or I'm sorry, not to give any information or, respond with any material knowledge about, because it is kind of a trap. They're setting a trap too for Alina Habba, because then they're going to say that, and then they're going to use this in a disciplinary proceeding against Alina Habba to try and suspend her, saying that she knew about Weisselberg and she put Weisselberg up in this case, knowing that he would falsely testify and yada, 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 and how that was a violation of Rule 3.7. Anyways, so what I did when Kajon Breyer, he's super tall. He's like 8 feet tall. He's literally, I think, 7 feet tall. And I'm being completely honest. I am 5'10". So, he's asking me questions, and I'm just writing on a notepad. No answers whatsoever. And the adverse inference, they're going to take it anyways. They're going to rule against you. What can you do? There's nothing you can do. So the adverse inference is going to happen anyways. And it's not really pleading the fifth because they're going to use anything you say against you. So even if you said something, it's worse than an adverse inference. As for how Your Honor should address this matter, no further action is necessary or appropriate. Matters outside the record, such as media sources, cannot influence the court's perception of this case or taint its view as to whether Mr. Weisselberg is a credible witness. It is well established that the courts must take such steps by rule and regulation that will protect their processes from prejudicial outside interferences. This holds true in a bench trial where there is a well-established presumption that the judge has adhered to basic rules of procedure when the judge is acting as a fact finder. The New York Times article is neither admissible nor reliable, and it should not be considered in Your Honor's determination as to the merits of the case. Further, Weisselberg is entitled to a presumption of innocence. Citation, boom. No, I can't read that. Citation. Therefore, it would be wholly improper and unconstitutional for this court to presume that Weisselberg engaged in any criminal wrongdoing in Your Honor's courtroom based solely on the publication of an unsourced and unverified news article. For the same reason, invocation of the doctrine of falsus in uno would be entirely inappropriate with respect to Mr. Weisselberg. Therefore, it is respectfully submitted that the inadmissible and unsubstantiated New York Times article should not influence Your Honor's perception of Mr. Weisselberg's credibility as a witness or otherwise affect the ultimate outcome of this case, nor should it be the subject of further inquiry by this court. We urge you to render your decision based solely on the evidence now before you. So funny that Alina Habba, Jersey Queen, Alina Habba, Mommy Habba, say that in a positive way for Alina. It's funny that Alina did not throw in kind of another request to the court, you know, to basically dismiss this case or render a favorable decision for the Trump organization. Now, let's see. Okay. No attachments, nothing. So this is kind of a pile on to Cliff Roberts. You notice how Cliff Roberts filed his letter first, because it was more technical. And then Alina Habba basically just said, yep, pile on. Let's do it. But there's also kind of admission here that Alina Habba might be in some hot water with the New York bar. Because there's an admission here that there's some kind of retainer with ethics counsel. All right, let's switch gears into something I think that potentially is a little more interesting to viewers, which is just a bunch of tweets, and there's a 15-minute video here I want to play. Let's play that 15-minute video first if I can find it. Well, let's hop into this Fox News clip. According to witnesses, Fulton County DA Fani Willis was having an affair and living with special prosecutor Nathan Wade before he was hired on. Holy conflict of interest. Yes, indeed. Donald Trump is not guilty. Let's play it. Oh, man, I can't hear it. Can't hear it because it's muted.
Election of 2024. The former president posted this. Fani Willis and her lover perpetrated a conspiracy to make money, cheat, and interfere with the presidential election of 2024.
What did I say?
Steve
I said
Harrigan.
at the outset that they were probably living with each other and that Wade was paying the mortgage or whatever.
Live in Atlanta.
Or, I mean, when I say Wade was paying the mortgage, Willis was issuing that kickback, the $600,000 to Wade, and then Wade was using that money, the money that DA Willis allocated to Nathan Wade to pay their mortgage or her mortgage, whatever it is.
With more on the salacious
They were commingling funds.
legal drama of Fani Willis. Steve.
Harris, this could be heading towards a dramatic...
Whenever I see Harris Faulkner, she used to be an anchor on KSTP, Channel 5, the ABC News affiliate in Minneapolis when she was younger. She's gained a lot of skill, just like Alex Jones gained skill. Harris was always pretty good. But yeah, seeing her on Fox News is totally different. Now she's become a lot more stern, sort of militant. I think she took some sort of intermediary position in Nashville after working in Minneapolis, but she was kind of exposed to the Midwest, and she wasn't as opinionated or, she's still kind of straight-faced. She's just getting paid a lot of money to read teleprompters for Fox News. Occasionally she'll give her view, like she does that morning show. I don't watch it very often. I don't really watch Fox News at all. I don't think many people do. But this is interesting.
Conclusion with a hearing scheduled for the 15th of February. But right now, as it stands, already 5 defendants have said that the DA, Fani Willis, should be disqualified. And as you mentioned last week, she admitted to being in a personal relationship with the prosecutor that she hired, Nathan Wade. A key point here, she says that relationship
This
only
is
began...
embarrassing. I mean, even for someone like me who has zero respect for the judicial system and has not even zero respect, like minus 1,000 respect for prosecutors and the Attorney General's office and district attorney's offices in general, this is embarrassing to watch. This is, of all the things that I've ever seen, this is might even top it, honestly.
after Wade was hired. Now, defense attorneys claim they can produce witnesses who say that actually the relationship began
And this,
before.
this is coming from me, who's basically like the biggest dumpster fire in the judicial system ever. I mean, I'll just be honest. Like, I have written in pleadings when I've gotten pretty frustrated, and I've just exposed truths where, like, I've had sex with clerks during trials. I have, and or other judicial staff that I was just whatever keeping secret. And I never disclosed that information until I really, really needed it. I did it in a post-trial thing like 7 years later. And in all fairness to some of these clerks, they were not aware at all.
The two were even living together. As it stands now, there are increased calls for the DA.
The former president posted this.
This is
Bonnie
just,
Willis
but again,
and her lover.
What I was doing was not, it was not anywhere near this. Like, I wasn't, it was just random. Like, and I didn't even know it really until I looked it up. Or I played stupid, but.
Perpetrated a conspiracy to make money, cheat, and interfere with the presidential election of 2024. Steve Harrigan, live in Atlanta, with more on the salacious legal.
Or, like, we can talk about, what's her face? Paula Kurkowski. Paula Kurkowski is an assistant equivalent of a district attorney in Minneapolis. She's an assistant city attorney. She was kind of in charge of the 3rd precinct where Derek Chauvin was assigned. The 3rd precinct burned down, obviously, during the George Floyd riots. Paula Kurkowski was the assistant attorney, the prosecutor assigned for all misdemeanor matters involving that precinct. Paula Kurkowski tried to have sex with me multiple times, threw me up against a wall, made out with me, called me incessantly, constantly called me, quote, cute and incredibly cute, and all these different things. And now she's denying it. And then she tried to kind of pivot and reverse after all this information came out. I put this in pleadings. I mean, she leaked information surrounding some of this stuff in 2017. There's been massive misconduct in my cases, right? I'm just giving one small example with Paula Kurkowski. Here, this is wholly different. This is like next level.
Legal drama of Fani Willis. Steve.
Well,
Harris,
let's bring
this
a
could be
picture
heading
up of
toward.
Paula Kurkowski, by the way, just as long as we're talking about it. There we go. There we go. Can we see it? No, we can't see it. We can kind of see it. It's over here. Now, was a little bit older in this one. She looked more like this back then. She looked a little hotter. Oh, you can't see that? Can you see it on the stream? Damn it. Can't see it on the stream. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. She looked a little bit hotter. Right there. Anyways, right there. Let's go back. Got totally sidetracked here. Damn it.
Towards a dramatic conclusion with a hearing scheduled for the 15th of February. But right now, as it stands, already 5 defendants have said that the DA, Fani Willis, should be disqualified.
I mean,
and as you mentioned last week, she admitted to being.
How many other times has Fani committed misconduct in various cases? And she's always got away with it because she wasn't dealing with President Trump and really powerful people in general, like a RICO case like this, where she couldn't avoid the scrutiny. This is the case of 99.9% of these prosecutors. They think that they're above the law. They can do anything they want. They've done this in many, many different types of cases. Just imagine How many affairs have happened of this magnitude in other cases that have either never been reported that materially impact the underlying outcome of the case? Fani Willis has definitely done this before with other guys or even women, in cases where even if she was like an assistant DA, if she had a previous track record of prosecuting cases as an assistant, she's done this. I know she has. It's just a hunch. I don't have evidence. I'm just using my intuition. I'm speculating, of course, but I'm just saying I'm pretty sure she's done this. If she's done it now, she's done it in the past. In criminal law, they call this prior bad acts. So she's in prior bad acts typically aren't admissible in criminal trials unless there's a really long running pattern of the same behavior or it's really egregious or something. But if you were to apply the prior bad acts standard to Fani Willis, it would be totally true. I mean, she's got a pattern here. All right, let's, I'm going to try and find this other, of course, I'm disorganized as usual. I'm actually fairly organized when it comes to my house and stuff. I've had to learn how to do that because it's not natural to me. I'm pretty not organized, but I'm organized in how I put thoughts and stuff together, writing and videos. And where the hell did it go? Come on, come on, come on. Where'd it go? I can't read it. Because we got to go through all these. Okay, here it is. Good. Now, this is a 15-minute video from JP Sears, comedian. I really wanted to play this. I didn't actually intend to talk about those letters from Hobo Judge Engoron and Jersey Queen Alina Habba and Cliff Roberts, but they came out. I looked at the dockets. I wanted to comment on them. But this is actually, in many ways, more important than those because it talks about and gives evidence in the form of this video from this Episcopalian, oh my God, I'm such an idiot, Episcopal church in South Minneapolis. So South Minneapolis, I'll give a story. Like 14 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, I was traveling to San Francisco to work at a small credit card company, and I was flying between Minneapolis and San Francisco on Northwest, or I think it was bought by, merged into Delta, right? And maybe it was, I can't remember if it was Delta back then, but anyways, I was reading articles and they were saying that Minneapolis was more liberal at that time in 2008 than San Francisco. And of course, San Francisco was like the leading liberal city in the entire world. So I was like, that's interesting to me. And they were talking about like the percentage of the gay population in Minneapolis versus San Francisco. And even at that time, Minneapolis was identified as, you know, the quote gayest city in the country, and the most liberal city in the country. And I think what you're going to see in this video is exactly that. It's just woke gone rogue. They've captured the churches. These churches are now certainly not an arm of God, not a branch of God. They have, I would argue, gone in the opposite direction. And God is the center of this country. It is the core of this country. It is the rock of this country. It's the rock of this world. And once you move away from that, everything falls apart. So what you're seeing with this church, specifically in Minneapolis, do you think these pastors would fight for some of our fundamental freedoms? Like, for example, if someone was being tortured or if someone had their free speech taken from them, do you think any of these pastors would go out of their way to defend them? Of course not. They would actually be advocating that these individuals, get tortured, essentially. These are the same pastors, these are the same church members who wanted to burn down the entire city of Minneapolis during the George Floyd riot. So let's play it. Of course, I have it muted. Let's unmute it.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and let us confess our faith today in the words of the Sparkle Creed. I believe in the non-binary God, whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads.
What?
I think they are trying to destroy people's relationship with God. Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend, where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants and Satan, shine the light of awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters. Now, you just saw what I would call a very deceptive clip. Someone who is wearing the cloakings of...
Let me do one thing here. Let me fix the... I am just fixing the view here. Oh man, that doesn't work either. I don't know why I have so much trouble with doesn't work either. It doesn't work either. Let's try that. Let's try that. Does that work? No, it doesn't. We'll just go with this for now.
God, they're representing the connection from people to God, speaking in very godless ways, I would dare say. You may have heard me say this before on this channel. The devil masquerades as an angel in disguise. In other words, is it too far past the devil's morals, which he doesn't have, to disguise himself as a person of God, to get people to connect to him thinking they're connecting to God, but in fact it's misdirection. Hey, you idiot, you thought you were connecting to God, but guess what? I am doing godlessness.
Let me I gotta fix this. This is driving me crazy. Let me get the correct. I'm like the worst streamer in the world. All this stuff is actually kind of complicated, and I haven't tried out this full view. There we go. There we go. I think. No? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on now. No, I do. Okay, this works.
I am doing godlessness on God, so you think you're getting connected to God, but the joke's on you.
You can't see JP Sears' head. You can't see his head, so we got to switch. God, this... I give up. we probably just need to do it like this.
You're getting more and more disconnected from God. I'm here to deliver that to you. Now, why would that happen? Well, that's a good question.
No, that
I don't
doesn't
know.
work
But if
either.
I was
What the
pretending to
hell?
know, I would say what history has taught us, what human knowledge has taught us, is one of the absolute first principles of communism is to disconnect people
idiot.
from God.
What
Ban
the hell's going
religion,
on
burn
here?
all the religious books, because guess what? We're humans. We all need a higher power because we come from a higher power. But here's the problem. If people are connected to their actual higher power, God, people will not surrender that connection for anything else. But if you can trick them into disconnecting from God, you can't destroy God. They've tried. So they can at most trick people into being disconnected from God, if
We'll
not
just leave it like
intimidate
that. Screw
them
it.
from being connected from God.
So-
and then what?
I got totally perplexed with the streaming software because I'm a complete moron when it comes to preparing here. I'm not a professional streamer. I apologize. Try and make it smoother. I gotta get better at this. The software I use is kind of like a fork of OBM. What do they call it? Streaming software on Windows. And it has a capture utility that with this particular screen, for whatever reason, sometimes occasionally doesn't work. Anyways, I want to go back to what JP Sears was originally saying here. And again, I only saw like the first 25 seconds of this before, so this is going to be my first reaction to this video.
Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend, where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants and Satan, shine a light of
Tyrants.
awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other
absurdities.
freedom fighters. Now, you just saw what I would call a very deceptive clip. Someone who is wearing the cloakings
I don't know about
of
deceptive.
God. They're
I think she was telling the
representing
truth. I think she was telling the truth. She wasn't lying. I think the whole thing is deceptive, but in her mind, I don't think that she felt like she was trying to purposefully deceive the congregation by any means.
the connection from people to God, speaking in very godless ways.
I think JP Sears is right about that, though. It is a form of disconnecting between the Holy Spirit and us.
dare say. You may have heard me say this before on this channel. The devil masquerades as an angel in disguise. In other words, is it too far past the devil's morals, which he doesn't?
The truth is that the devil is an angel. So the devil isn't an angel in disguise so much as that the devil is just the devil and he's a fallen angel from heaven, JP. Remember, the devil, according to the Bible, is, was like a top lieutenant of God, was an angel.
Have to disguise himself as a person of God, to get people to connect to him, thinking they're connecting to
But
God.
the devil led a rebellion against God using lies and deception.
But in fact, it's misdirection. Hey, you idiot. You thought you were connecting to God, but guess what? I am doing godlessness. I am doing godlessness on God. So you think you're getting connected to God, but the joke's on you. You're getting more and more disconnected from
JP is
God.
right.
I'm here to deliver that to you. Now, why would that happen? Well, that's a good question. I don't know. But if I was pretending to know, I would say what history has taught us, what human knowledge has taught us, is one of the absolute first principles of communism is to disconnect people from God. Ban
Well, that's an
religion.
interesting comment. And this only has 827, I guess it's a retweet, so. Communism and dismantling this notion of God, I think, is correct. You do see this in a lot of socialist societies. I mean, even Hitler did this. And a lot of new Hitler content is actually coming out on X now that has been heavily suppressed over the years. And again, this is a difficult subject because there's been so much anti-Hitler propaganda throughout the years. But if you actually listen to some of the statements that Hitler made, whether you agree with whatever happened or not, I think 99.2% of people agree that everything that happened during World War II was wrong. The West blamed everything on Hitler, and that's just not accurate. I mean, a lot of the blame does rest on the shoulders of the West. I mean, those concentration camps would not have existed if not for World War I, Treaty of Versailles, the financial sanctions imposed on Germans in general to create this virulent anti-Semitism, according to Daniel Goldhagen, who wrote a dissertation at Harvard. And there was a popular book that came out of that.
Burn all the religious books, because guess what? We're
But what I'm getting at here is sort of this dismantling of morality, of ethics, that underpin this idea of God, right? Whatever your ethics or morality is, I mean, obviously everybody has different ethics. And if you think about that, particularly in the legal system, you know, you're supposed to have some modicum of integrity. You're not supposed to knowingly provide false statements, for example, to a court, perjury. You're not supposed to deceive intentionally. You can argue. See, there's a fine line between argument and deliberate deception. And with respect to, you know, socialism and communism and the destruction of morality, which underpins the idea of God, that's happening everywhere throughout the world. And it's been happening now for many, many years in the US. And we're at this sort of threshold. We're at kind of the edge. And it's getting to the point where we're almost in, you know, a civil war in this country. In fact, many people would argue that we are. In fact, I have argued that we are. And I think we are. We're in a civil war. We're basically in World War III, and that's because of some of the issues with ethics and morality and the destruction of God. And how that brings in communism is really interesting. And I think Karl Marx said that, is in order to bring in communism, you have to dismantle religion.
Humans, we all need a higher power because we come from a higher power. But here's the problem. If people are connected to their actual higher power, God,
where else would we come from?
People will not surrender that connection for anything else. But if you can trick them into disconnecting from God, you can't destroy God. They've tried. So they can at most trick people into being disconnected from God, if not intimidate them from being connected from God. And then what's left? Well, humans.
Well, I mean, saying that Jesus has two fathers, I mean, like in an official setting like this, and not as a joke, who's the other father? I mean, God is one father of Jesus. Who's the other father? The Holy Spirit, like the Holy Triune. Like, I don't understand. It's just complete nonsense.
Still have this basic need to make something else their higher power. Guess what? Oh, the tyrannical regime. I guess that's my higher power now. Is it a good higher power? No, but it's the only.
Okay, so that's JP is getting at the fact that now you're substituting the idea of morality, ethics, and God for the state.
Higher power I have, or that I'm allowed to have. I've consented my way into this. Instead of eating beautiful, nourishing, organic food, I am just feeding off of toxic junk food, poison. That'll be my higher power if it's all I have.
Okay,
that's
now
what
he's throwing in, you know, stuff that everybody eats junk food. Come on.
I think is happening. That's what they do with communism. And unless I'm sorely mistaken,
I'm trying to lose a lot of weight, bro.
There's a very orchestrated attempt to implement communism in the U.S. to help facilitate a beautiful one world government. you'll own nothing and be happy about it. So let's take another look. Now,
Kind of seems like he has a
innocently,
little bit of
we could just
autism,
say,
doesn't
hey,
he?
this is like wokeness infiltrating churches. Yeah, that's how it looks on the surface. But you have to really wonder, what is wokeness? Where's that come from? What's it ultimately trying to do? I don't think the end goal of
is
wokeness is to make
wokeness?
things more woke. I think wokeness is just a new word for Marxism. And Marxism is the spearhead of communism.
Okay, I
So
think I
let's
like
take a
that.
look at a
I like that. I agree. I agree to some extent that woke culture is a beachhead for socialism and communism. And you know, frankly, we already have that. You know, I'm dealing with a situation right now where we have a city attorney who owns several companies, very wealthy, and he has abused his government position in order to, you know, maintain control over those companies, to gain benefits for those companies. And that's exactly what socialism is. It's sort of this union or intersection between private enterprise and the government. And therefore, the government acts at the behest of the private enterprise and then will thwart individual rights in order to effectuate the goals of the private enterprise and ultimately for the greed of whoever owns it. In this case, for example, government officials. So that really is the nexus between how socialism grows in government and what are we seeing with Nancy Pelosi and her stock portfolio? What are we seeing with Mitch McConnell, Cocaine Mitch? All these guys are getting extremely wealthy and they're voting against these border deals or voting them down or voting against they're voting for the border deals, but I was thinking of Mayorkas. When they voted down the impeachment of Mayorkas, you could argue that it's because people like Cocaine Mitch, and even though Nancy Pelosi isn't in Congress anymore, there are many other Pelosi's or sort of look-alike Pelosi's in a policy sense, even rhinos who are making money off of this union between the government and private enterprise. So they're, in other words, they're really socialists in the purest sense, in the purest form.
another person who's in the position pretending they're representing God when in fact, maybe not, but you be the judge. Let's take a look.
Pastor L. I use pronouns like she or they, pastor to a group of unhoused
Wow, she is extremely...
folks. Before we get started,
Unhoused, can't even call them homeless. They are unhoused folks.
I wanted to just name something too
I wonder if
from the
she's a
reading from
lesbian.
Corinthians. You might have noticed that we didn't read one part out loud, and that's because it's yikes.
It's yikes, just to be technical. So in other words, we're actually here to censor the Bible. We're going to keep you from passages in the
Yeah,
actual
censor the
Bible.
Bible.
No, it's
So I guess that's why they're censoring all of us, right? Have you noticed that the censorship regime has gotten more intense lately?
to this holy book. It's too much for you. We're going to keep that from you because, well, it's just yikes.
But really, in this letter to the Corinthians, Paul's being kind of a jerk.
He's being a jerk.
Oh, Paul's being a jerk. Of course he was being a jerk.
Most holy figures are being a jerk. Take it from me. My pronouns are confusion.
I wanted to just sort of name that
That's
out.
That's the whole metaphor of Paul. Like he was persecuting Christians until Jesus visited him, and then he transformed. He was incredibly vicious.
Even before we got started with anything else.
He's basically the founder. I mean, many people think Peter is the founder of Christianity in terms of like a realistic church. Obviously, Jesus is the founder of Christianity, but you know what I mean? Like founding the Catholic Church and Vatican, Rome. But Paul probably had a bigger and wider impact.
It's the way that we can look at the way our traditions, the way that our scriptures.
So in other words, you have to talk about Paul's behavior in order to understand why Paul had sort of transformed into becoming, an evangelist to speak about the good news, to understand just the full picture. You can't just leave stuff out.
Have been used to harm our siblings and to be accountable for that. So thank you.
I appreciate the Daily Caller for inserting that fart sound. Wow, here's the comments. Do not even call her a pastor. This is not a church. This is not a Christian. Could it be the devil masquerading as an angel in disguise? Next comment. Also in the Bible, demons use terms like we, us, they.
I didn't know that. I guess maybe.
How about some more people calling themselves pastors, barfing wokeness onto you? Does that help you get more connected from God? Hey, don't use your God-given gender pronouns because God makes mistakes. So that'll maybe help you not believe in God if you believe God makes mistakes all the time with your gender. Therefore, you have to change your pronouns to not be based on reality, but based on your imagination. But don't think too much about that. Here's what this pastor says.
Trans people are sacred.
Nobody else says, just trans people.
Throughout Scripture, we read that we are all, each and every one of us, created.
Well, the problem here is not that he's saying that, particular groups of people are, quote, sacred. It's the fact that he's trying to evangelize the idea that you can be trans to sterilize these parishioners.
In God's divine image, that we are
created in God's divine image doesn't mean we live that way. It means we started that way. What have we done to screw up that divine image along the way? Got to ask yourself that.
a reflection of God.
He's sterilizing his congregation by pushing this trans agenda. And it's like totally anti-Christian, the whole idea about families and God, Jesus, and the Bible, Christianity in general is loving other people, laughing, joking, having joy, having children. And the whole trans agenda is not about having children. It's about sterilizing people. So families can't really exist. As you get further into that whole scheme of sterilization, maybe they can have children, but still, you can see where this is going, less and less children. And, obviously as we've seen, a lot of these LGBTQ people like to censor other people, and they're filled with hate. They're just filled with hate. The social justice warriors, they're the first ones to accuse you of, anything, in order to lock you down, destroy your career, destroy your professional livelihood, torture you. That's not Christian. How is that Christian? How is that even moral? How is it ethical?
That means that all of us in our diversity give a fuller picture.
Like he just did a very big leap. Like we're created in God's divine image. So that means all of us in our diversity.
And then,
how'd you get there, buddy?
Here's the other thing. Like, where is the whole trans agenda in the Bible or the Torah? Where is it? In Genesis, where is it? Genesis is like Torah. Where is it? So he's substituting like his own views into the Bible. Very narcissistic.
Of what God is actually like. God looked at all of creation and claimed
the Old Testament really is the Torah, but
every one of us as good, regardless of our sexual orientation or our gender identity or expression, that we are all God's people with inherent worth and dignity. I'm
not someone who talks about Christianity or Judaism or really anything surrounding these. I obviously talk about my connection with God and that I pray a lot. I've always been like that. It's not something that's new. And I serve God above all else. I always have. And, I've never done any drugs. I've never smoked. I drank a little bit in college. I have a stomach issue. I don't drink. I haven't drank in many, many years since college. I'm 40 years old. And, I constantly pray for God's discernment and guidance. And I do what I believe is right based on that discernment. And I'm also someone who believes in reality. And someone who looks at facts and not hallucinating or imagining things that simply don't exist. I don't. So when people get really crazy about God or whatever, I also kind of discard that, right? That's why I'm discarding this too. But my point is that I think God wants us to be realistic and live in reality, and be accountable to ourselves, and be disciplined and regimented in terms of like, taking care of our mind. Like everybody has issues, and like I wish that I could take care of my body better, that I could lose another 15 pounds. I'm not perfect. No one is. But I do try and take care of my mind and my spiritual well-being. I've always been like that. And this is a huge red flag to me. And it always has been. I've seen these churches in Minneapolis with these rainbow flags on them. And again, there's nothing wrong with believing one group is, quote, I think everybody is sacred, unless you're a pedophile or commit very egregious crimes. And I think even some murderers can be saved. That's not to say that everybody is just lost. But there are accidents that happen. But this is almost worse than that, to be honest with you. This is like worse than, because basically he's murdering future generations of families, of people that could exist in his congregation. That's what he's doing.
Dignity.
With inherent worth and dignity, kind of gotta understand we're not all good no matter what we do. We can make horrible decisions and moral decisions that harm ourselves, negatively impact people around us. And guess what? To qualify yourself as earning a first place trophy of being good, it's maybe not the case.
Throughout the Gospels, Jesus called us to love one another, each and every other
It's taking
person,
it
because
out of
he
context.
recognized
Obviously, love one another, but that doesn't mean push wild agendas on people just because you love one another.
that when we love, we are in fact growing closer to God,
I like that part.
because God is love. And if we're not loving one another, then we're not really experiencing God, because God is love.
Now, also from the Daily Caller, take a quick look-ski at this presumably teenager's room.
Oh wow, we got just
All symbols of communism. Now, also from the
lot of
Daily
craziness
Caller,
going on
we're
there.
going to look at this video. It's kind of funny and kind of scary, as most funny things are. And as a guy on the street
when I was
offering
growing up, when I was like a sophomore, junior in high school, I think I had a poster of Einstein on the wall, which, by the way, I still have over here. I have it framed. That was a gift from my mother. I was close to my mom more than anything, and I think for my birthday, I'm getting a little emotional here. I didn't mean to. She would buy me posters and then frame them and put them on my wall. And I really, that's why I love the Einstein poster. Imagination is more important than knowledge, meaning analysis is more important than just memorization of facts. And I mean, she'd occasionally buy me I remember she got me a Roberto Baggio. He was a Italian soccer star, played I think for AC Milan. I had a poster of Baggio on the wall, soccer stuff, because I played soccer growing up. Nothing crazy like a flag of the LGBTQ stuff, or the rainbow flag, or a Marxist flag, or anything like that. If I would have pulled even maybe because the rainbow flag really didn't exist back then, maybe it did, I don't know. If I would have pulled a Marxist flag and put it up on the wall, it wouldn't work. It would have got pulled down. Not that I would. Again, not that I would put it up, but I'm just saying, like, a normal parent would be like, no, that's not going on the wall.
Free sex changes for children. Now, it sounds ridiculous. That's because it is. When it comes to sex changes, is it out there to truly affirm and accept humans for who they are? God bless you, if that's what you think. Another perspective is part of the gender ideology movement intended to disconnect people from God, to trick people into believing, hey, you're probably born in the wrong body. You're not the gender that you are. The fire's not hot, it's actually wet. You're not the gender that you are. And if you buy into that, then inherently you have to start thinking, well, that God created me, therefore God makes mistakes. And if God makes mistakes, God's not very godly. And if God's not very godly, then God isn't really God. And if God isn't really...
So, like, God is reality. Like, like, let's maybe observe reality for a second, you know, figure out, like, what the hell's going on.
God, I don't really...
That's why, like, this whole delusional thing is getting farther and farther away from God. People who make things up, you know, there's, like, organic mental illness where people are just, you know, crazy, but it's important to live in reality. And that's why, like, doing drugs and stuff has never appealed to me in any way whatsoever. Like smoking weed, even smoking weed, I don't understand it. The CBD stuff might be different because it could be medicinal because it doesn't give you a mood altering experience. But like the whole idea about observing and listening to God and seeking God's discernment is living in reality. And so when you're then artificially constructing these things in order to move away from that, that's kind of a red flag.
Believe in God. And here we are, tricked into falling down the steps into being disconnected from God. Communists would love that. Let's take a look at the video.
Offer you guys in a sex change? Yes, no, maybe so? Somewhat? No. What's going on, y'all?
Yeah, so no one's interested
free
in
sex
that.
changes for kids. So we send y'all to Tijuana. They'll dice it up.
Oh, yeah.
Bring them back.
Tijuana.
The border's open, so you can just walk right through. And for an extra fee, we'll send you straight to San Francisco.
I'm sure these young girls are like,
No, this is an NGO.
oh yeah, it's an NGO.
Yeah, the Biden administration pays for this.
It's interesting too that especially younger men are finally catching on to this whole agenda, you know, and this is a good way to mock it, but it is true. Like everything he's saying is absolutely true.
That's so cool.
And you know, these NGOs are highly incentivized with millions of dollars in funding, and the heads or the senior management of these NGOs are making so much money by pushing these radical agendas.
Whoa, that's so cool. And
that's
just
the only
because, like,
reason that they
when
can
I
get
was
away
a
with
kid,
it is
I
because-
enjoyed Where's Waldo books.
Because there's no other reason that people would be down at the border helping these illegal immigrants cross if they weren't getting highly compensated for some reason, and then they just lie. And it's the same thing with the you know, the woke agenda with, you know, inserting the whole, like, you know, sex change stuff, you know, censorship, the pronoun crap.
Who am I kidding? As an adult, I enjoy Where's Waldo books. So I saw this tweet posted by
Everybody loves Where's
Terribly
Waldo.
Quotable Memes. Find the trans person. It's really hard to do. You can try to find them.
Wait. You can't find them at all. It's very, very difficult to find that person. Where is he? Where is she?
Been able to. Where are they? Now, we started this video with a
Boom.
real delightful word from someone posing as a person of God. What else did they have to say? It doesn't get on worse, if that's more good or English. So let's pick up from the beginning and we'll see what else she has to say. What
I mean, I
she
did
is
make up a word evangelize, so when I meant to say evangelize. So, I mean, talk about people who speak poor English, me.
to get people to believe of God. And you have to ask yourself, is that pointing people in
You
the
know
direction?
why I do that? I think I get like a lot of spit in my mouth when I'm talking for some reason. Like I don't know, whatever. My teeth, my jaw, whatever. I've always kind of been that way. So I like, ugh, especially on longer sentences. Anyways, it's probably gross. I shouldn't say that.
Direction of God? Or is it pointing people in the opposite direction of God while trying to deceive them? It's the direction of God. I got my opinion, but you let me know your opinion in the comments. Let's take a look. By the way, put on your Satan shield for a second.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
Again, this is in South Minneapolis. This is in South Minneapolis. 20 miles away from where I'm at. These are the people that I've had to deal with for 10 years, 15 years. Can you remember now? That have constantly tried to terrorize me, raid my house, accuse me of all kinds of, hate crimes, accuse me of all kinds of unspeakable things. Every single crime in the book, they basically accused me of at this point. I mean, what am I? Am I all of them? Am I none of them? Like, I'm mocking them clearly because these are the kinds of people who, if you criticize them, they will file a police report, or they will, if you showed up because you just wanted to listen to what they were saying because it's a church, but you had previously criticized them maybe on YouTube or something, they would try and arrest you for trespassing. These are the kinds of people who do that in Minneapolis that I've been unfortunately dealing with for 15 years.
And let us confess.
By the way, that's probably very inclusive. Rise in body or spirit. So that's inclusive to people that don't want to rise physically. I don't know.
Our faith today in the words of the Sparkle Creed. I believe in the non-binary God, whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads.
What about Mother Mary? Was that the second dad? Maybe Joseph and God?
So
I don't know.
JP Sears has the same question that I have. Who is the other father here? Is it the Holy Spirit? What's going on?
More of a not too dead kind of guy.
And saw everyone as a sibling child of God.
But of course, you're asking that question because you're confused, but they're making that statement because they want to, make Jesus into a gay figure.
I believe in the rainbow spirit who shatters our image of one white light and refracts it into a rainbow of gorgeous diversity.
In other words, worship the pride flag.
I believe in the church of everyday saints as numerous, creative, and resilient as patches on the AIDS quilt, whose feet are grounded in mud and whose eyes gaze at the stars in wonder.
Nonsense.
I believe in the calling to each of us that love is love is love. So
science is science.
So you're supposed to just love everyone. You're not supposed to make any judgments about anyone. You're not supposed to do anything. So if you have people doing unspeakable things, you're just supposed to say, love is love.
And,
So, beloved, let us love. I believe, glorious God, help my unbelief.
I mean, there should be someone in there.
Well, there you have it. This is
really
what is being pushed on people. And I would say, and I'm going to say it again in future videos and, future musings, awakened people have to understand the devil absolutely can and does masquerade as an angel in disguise. A sheeple people, they just buy into how things appear to be. An awakened person understands not everything is as it appears to be. But if you're awakened, you can do your own critical thinking, use your senses, use your knowledge, use your heart, use your connection to actual God.
They've been doing the Mike Lindell Syndicate here by sponsoring all these videos, and I've checked out the wellness company. They have this package that you can get. You have to do just like a little visit, like a telehealth visit, and then they send you like an emergency kit. The emergency kit is fantastic. It has like a bunch of medication. It has just basic antibiotics, anti-nausea stuff, and that's the thing. Like, when you're not feeling that great and you're at home and you're like, oh, I don't really want to go into urgent care, I don't want to go into the doctor, it's just so nice to have it there. So the emergency kit from the wellness company, I think, is a fantastic purchase. And they are sponsoring all these videos as well.
Maybe
So, you know, it goes to hopefully good causes.
not all the pronouns in the world to help decipher what's your North Star telling you about this person, this movement in front of you. Is it potentially a devil masquerading as an angel in disguise, or is it an angel? Just because the presentation says, yeah, I'm an angel, doesn't necessarily mean it is. And I think we need to use our own beautiful, God-given, miraculous, critical thinking to help us navigate our ways through a world where I would dare say is riddled with spiritual warfare, good versus evil. But let me know what you think in the comments below, my beautiful freedom-loving friend. Appreciate you watching. And
War is raging.
before you go, here's a special message. Absolutely not brought to you by Satan. My friend, you've heard me talk about the wellness company and their emergency medical kit for a while now, because I love it. And this next product is one I honestly believe every American should have also. Spike support. Use your imagination why. I mean, for crying out loud, with so many previously held blend of natural nutrients.
Well, we won't go into that, but all right, let's look at the rest of these tweets and then we'll close it down and look at comments. Okay, we watched that. Here we go. This is some crazy political party in Minnesota called Legal Marijuana Now is being taken out. By the way, I didn't talk. There's another major issue in Minnesota. So I showed a video of one of the charred buildings. And it was like UMN, it was the Upper Midwest Law Center they had a video of, and I thought it was the UMN Law Center on the University of Minnesota campus, but this was actually in this commercial building in Golden Valley, which is about, 7 miles outside of Minneapolis, which is a building that I have been in frequently, actually. I shouldn't say frequently. I've been in it a couple times. And so 3 conservative organizations in Minnesota have been firebombed in the past week or two. And now we had an incident up in Duluth in the Iron Range in a town called Lutsen. And Lutsen is the home of a fairly prominent ski resort in Minnesota. It's probably the best ski resort in Minnesota. And the main lodge was firebombed. I've also been to that lodge. I've been in the hot tub at that lodge. But they're saying that there are some code violations and it could be some issue with that. I don't know. Again, I'm telling you, things are getting really, really wild in Minnesota. Minnesota is probably, just like other major liberal cities in the country, Seattle, New York City, Chicago, but Minneapolis is kind of unique because there's zero, if you're a conservative, they want to murder you, is kind of what some of these liberals think. And again, they've done everything they can do to me. They would kill me if they could. They've tried to kill me multiple times through, their raids on my home. They've put automatic assault rifles in my face during those raids. Again, if they could kill me, they would. And I've known that for a long time. So these firebomb incidences in Minnesota specifically against like the American Experiment, which is like a think tank, a conservative think tank. Bill Glahn, I think, is associated with that organization, and the Upper Midwest Law Center. It's like the Reichstag fire. They're just trying to outlaw all political opposition. And so you see the Minnesota DFL here trying to outlaw this other party, even though this is like a incredibly left-wing radical party, Legal Marijuana Now. They're just trying to get rid of them. This is incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. They're censoring everybody. Look at what they've done to me. I mean, they've censored me for 150 years, and that's not necessarily Minnesota specifically, but it is kind of too, because I've been kind of censored, you know, in the military, in federal courts, in state courts, everywhere. And all the orders are sealed. I can't even talk about them. I can't even talk about I can just say that, you know, like, I've been censored for 150 years. Some of it's public because it's on dockets, but even so, it's been sealed anyways. Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous. And again, this is why it's a spiritual war. You just got to put on the armor of God. You just got to ask God to shield you, give you his armor. And that's the only thing you got to do, because you can't stop. You got to continue telling the truth. You got to continue speaking out. You can't let people shut you down or censor you regardless of what they're trying to do. I mean, I don't know. That's the only thing I know. I mean, and I've prayed a lot about this, a lot. And I wish there was a, you know, an off ramp, but there isn't. Sweden ends Nord Stream 2 terror investigation, but keeps data about the culprit secret. Sweden claims it has evidence, but won't release it for lack of jurisdiction because it was in the Baltic there, kind of on the edge of the Gulf of Finland. Sweden, so it's in international waters, they're claiming, and it wasn't in Swedish territorial waters. Sweden has shared the data with Germany. Is there a better way to say that the US government did it without saying it? Kim.com. Now, Kim.com has also been rated. You know, he came out a little bit with this today. He wrote some stupid white paper that he's had for a long time. I know that he's hired a lot of white shoe, Agent X knows a lot about this, a lot of white shoe firms in New York City to fight some of the Biden nonsense with Mega Upload back in the day when he was in New Zealand. He's still apparently on pretrial resave, really tried to shut him down in New Zealand. He said he's still on bond. Basically, he's on probation or so. I don't know what he's on, but they have him on a tight leash in New Zealand. And they raided his house with like a commando team. Again, very similar to what they've done to Roger Stone, what they've done to me. I mean, they've done it now to President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Unfortunately, I mean, it happened. Like, I was a test case, basically. They wanted to see, like, okay, there's some, you know, small potatoes, very, very small scale. They wanted to see what they could do, how that person would react, all that stuff. I was, in other words, basically a test case. Alejandro Mayorkas is in the running for the most despicable man in America. Department of Homeland Security Chief Mayorkas. Americans killed by illegals should not be politicized. This reminds me a lot of defense attorneys, actually, because they're like, oh, well, don't make a big deal out of it. We don't want, you know, we don't want to upset the court. When someone tells you that, do the exact opposite. That means make it a fucking big deal. But when it comes to American citizens being killed by illegal immigrants, it should be front page news everywhere. I was stunned that Mayorkas was not impeached. I haven't even had the time or the interest to look at what rhinos voted to save his ass. They should be impeached. Dublin is a shithole. Play this.
Okay, folks, back in the UiPath building. And you see this? Look at this. There's even more tents now going.
Tent town, illegal immigrants in Dublin. It's like 1/1000th of how it would look in Tenderloin in San Francisco.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Look at this.
It's fucking unbelievable.
Okay, folks, back in the UiPath building.
Michael O'Keefe. Okay, that was the JP Sears video we watched. Okay, here we go. This is kind of interesting. This looks like a city council in Maine, and they have a Somalian on the council.
What about the military folks that are getting out of the military and they have to go through all the lines and start all over again, even though they have credentials? So my question, pretty simple. Why would we fast track them and we won't do it for our military?
They have the advantage of speaking the language, most of
Okay.
our military folks. So these folks that we're really working on may not have that. So it's going to be really difficult.
Oh, okay. So, if you speak English and you're an American citizen and you served in the military in combat, you should not have a job because that is an advantage. However, if you're an illegal immigrant, doesn't speak this language, you should have a job in this country so that you can have children and then you can oversaturate America with your particular, ethnicity over classical European ethnic groups that have otherwise dominated most of the Midwest, most of the country.
For them to say, yes, I used to be an electrician in my country. I'm just using mine, which is Somalia.
Here's a funny
But
thing. So
that-
she said electrician in Somalia. Are you kidding me? I've never heard of an electrician. There's a million Somalians in Minneapolis, and I've dealt with many, many Somalians in my life. I've never heard one who said they were an electrician either here or in Somalia. I'm sure there are here. But I don't know if she's making a joke or what. Like, because have you seen the infrastructure in Somalia?
I might not really
Yeah, right.
fall into our laws that we have in this country.
Unbelievable. It's all part of the plan. Okay. Unmute. Unmute.
¿Tiene derecho para votar?
Que entramos ilegal, por lo menos tenemos
Right,
acceso
so
a votar.
these are
¿Para quién
illegal
se va a votar?
immigrants being interviewed on who they support in the upcoming election. Joe Biden or President Trump? Now, I know that Elon Musk had commented on this.
Está ayudando a nosotros aquí.
Yo creo que la mayoría Biden.
Biden. Él es el que nos está ayudando por Biden.
Now, you see how they immediately go to Biden, and the first thing they say is, well, Biden is helping us. They don't care about this country. Most Americans, even if they're thinking of themselves and they're narcissists, they'll talk about a range of issues. They'll talk about the economy and how it's helping others. They'll talk about foreign policy, and other people around the world who might be impacted by America's global influence. They might talk about, local issues like law enforcement in their community. They might talk about subsidies or tariffs that impact their business or something. They might talk about energy. There's a whole basket of issues that they would bring up, and 98% of the time with these illegal immigrants, when you ask them about the election, they'll say, Biden, he is helping us. Biden, he is helping. Now, they do have limited English. That might be the only thing they know to say. But again, they're speaking Spanish here. He's asking in Spanish. So they could easily communicate in Spanish other issues, and they're not doing that.
Por supuesto que por Biden.
Le gusta apoyar a los migrantes. Sí, es muy buena persona.
He's a good person because he is helping illegal immigrants. Meanwhile, he is killing innocent civilians in far-flung regions like Syria, Iraq.
No, Trump es otra cosa. Ese es otra cosa y este es otra cosa.
Different
¿Tiene
things,
derecho para votar?
smiles. It's really disgusting. Here we go with our boy again with the kind of the surfer bro way of describing all this stuff.
Comcast is a family-run business. You know, the Comcast that bought MSNBC and that whole media conglomerate, technically they're a publicly traded company and their top shareholders are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, but they were founded by Ralph J. Roberts, who served as the CEO for 46 years. Roberts graduated from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. It was co-founded by Julian A. Brodsky, who also graduated from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Interesting. And now Ralph's son is the chairman and CEO of Comcast, hence why it's kind of like a family-run business. And Brian also, well, he went to the University of Pennsylvania, but there it is. We check his Comcast bio, graduated from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. We will come back to this in just a second, because I couldn't help but notice on this dude's Wikipedia page that there's a whole section for this thing called the Maccabia Games, or however you say it, which he's been competing in for decades, at least since 1981. Holy shit, bro. And he goes and competes in the Jewish Squash Olympics every 3 or 4 years. Just in case you were wondering what MSNBC thought of that thing happening over there. The Wharton School pops up all the time, so I'll real quickly tell you why I mention it when I do.
The Israeli war and, you know, why they're pushing the pro-Israel agenda. I think he's trying to be careful not to sound anti-Semitic.
Complex and the intelligence agencies, they need to recruit from somewhere, right? And they do it from private Ivy League universities.
So the University of Pennsylvania is the worst Ivy League school. You got a lot of idiots, low IQ people going to University of Pennsylvania. Now the Wharton School is the top finance school in the nation. So the Wharton School is a little bit unique and different. And doesn't necessarily have a bunch of idiots, but I'm just talking about the University of Pennsylvania in general. Like the law school, for example, has a bunch of idiots, and just the other degree programs. I do have an uncle who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, actually. Actually, it's not an uncle, he's a cousin. And I emailed him once, and at his pen email, and he responded back, "Why don't you go read my books?" What an asshole.
Like the Harvard Kennedy School, like the Wharton School. So I'm not saying that everyone that graduated from places like Wharton are necessarily connected to intelligence.
So, you know, Wharton, you know, like you got President Trump went to Wharton, you got a bunch of other crazy people in Minneapolis who are after me. Again, sorry, that was a Freudian slip. I didn't mean, I don't want to put this recording on private, but I'm not necessarily talking about anyone specifically. I'm just talking, there's a lot of people who went to these schools in Minneapolis, and they're after me. I'm not identifying anyone specifically again, so just to be clear on that.
Things. I'm just saying that it's worth noticing. But anyways, Comcast, family-run media business, and Brian is in charge, and media runs in the family. It's in his blood, and it's a damn good thing too, because when you look at the board of directors of Comcast, you'll notice really quickly that none of them have experience in media at all. We got a lot of experience with like shitty insurance companies and real estate and hotels and resorts and more real estate, the Federal Reserve. We got bankers. We got chemical companies that will poison your kids. Oh, we got more bankers. They've got experience bottling soda and making spices to sell you for cheap, running cruise lines,
parasites on top,
more real estate, frying chicken and making Taco Bell. But that's the whole board. That's literally it. Like, on the board of Comcast, Brian is the only one with a significant amount of media experience in his background.
Yeah,
but it's not such a big deal because Comcast
is like the most garbage Ivy League school. It is, you know, like anybody can get into Penn. all you have to do is basically make an application and say you're, black or a tranny.
This is just the parent company, and like the news company like NBC News, that's below Comcast, and they have their own board. And it's all good because Cesar is in charge of NBC Universal News Group, and I'm sure he's got it covered.
So this is where this
here's his bio, and when we read it,
Israeli
we find
narrative
out
comes
that he's got
from with
experience in
respect
banking
to,
and
the
Walmart
Gaza
and PepsiCo,
situation
and he's on the Council of
on
Foreign
MSNBC.
Relations and the Aspen Institute
and NBC.
And wait for it, he graduated from the Wharton School at UPenn. Sure are a lot of coincidences out there. It almost makes you wonder, why are these people in charge of the giant media company that's in charge of the news? It's probably
They're not anymore. It's failing. I mean, Comcast, because they've now integrated cable into the whole dynamic. I mean, they're in the, with internet and stuff, like so many people have Comcast internet connections. It's successful because they had to diversify, but just if you're just talking about the news service itself, it's failing. Oh, interesting. Okay, speaking of the University of Pennsylvania, should fake rape victims be prosecuted? Now, again, this is, what's his face? Brian, a former linebacker. I'm forgetting his last name. He spent 6 years in prison on one of these fake rape cases. It's partly his fault because he took a plea deal. They were trying to put him in prison for like 40 years, and they offered him a 15-year prison sentence as a plea deal. He was in high school. He was terrified. His mom was terrified, so he took the plea deal. And then 6 years later, the so-called rape victim recanted her story and said that she made it up in order to get a settlement from the school district. And then he was released in this post-conviction phase. Yeah, it's a sad situation, and you can see God at work here. He's like a bright light. If you've ever seen interviews with him, it's just like you're seeing, God's discernment. You're seeing the Holy Spirit at work. And so that's kind of the positive takeaway you get from these situations. And then, you wonder if this so-called, and she was never prosecuted. The school district did engage in some civil enforcement action against her to try and collect the settlement funds back from her, but it was already spent. I don't know if she was prosecuted. Other than that, I'm about 99% sure she wasn't. And that's the issue here. There's absolutely no accountability for these people. These egregious situations where someone comes forward and makes a fake allegation to hoax the system, Amber Heard level stuff, they should be prosecuted. That's one reason why I think Amber Heard moved to Spain or wherever she's at. She's afraid that she's going to get prosecuted either in Virginia or California. Speaking of fake rape allegations, Virginia, where Amber Heard was litigated the defamation case with Johnny Depp. These people will go to any lengths to destroy your life, and that's part of the problem. I mean, they need to be prosecuted. There needs to be some accountability for them. All right, we got Tucker.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are
Tucker's
risks
going to
to
release the
conducting an
video
interview.
tomorrow, 6 or 7 Central Time, maybe 6 or 7 Eastern Time. It hasn't been announced. There's been partial transcripts that have been released. We played those again. I'm not entirely sure if those are accurate. I didn't do a bunch of background research on it. It seems to be true. We'll see. I'm guessing it'll probably get the equivalent of views that the Trump interview got. I think it'll get actually a little bit more. It'll get like 15, 20 million more. I could be wrong. People are predicting it could get like 500 million views. We'll see.
Like this, obviously. So we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it.
But so people are talking about like how the American population now has access to maybe listening to what Vladimir Putin has to say. But what about the Russians? The Russians will get full access to Tucker Carlson and that point of view, which I think is even more important, even more massive than just Americans being able to hear. I've been listening actively to what Vladimir Putin is saying. I've listened to a lot of his translated speeches, so I know where he's at. And again, most people, even people like Alex Jones, they don't understand the whole Ukrainian-Russia situation. He continues to refer to like Slava the Great or Slava the Wise or whatever, who was kind of the chieftain of these Slavic tribes. That's not accurate at all. The truth is that Russia was founded by a Viking from Sweden, from Stockholm, called Rurik. We can go and look at the wiki right now. And his buddy, another Viking from Sweden, from Stockholm, named Oleg, went down to Kiev back in the day. We're talking like 1100, 1000 BC. Rurik took a boat with a bunch of Vikings into what is modern day Novgorod, and it's about 30 miles north of St. Petersburg. Okay. And he built a fort, an amazing fort that still exists today. That's how excellent of engineers they were. I don't know. Maybe that's why I am an engineer. I don't know. That fort is still standing today. You could use it as a fort today. That's how amazingly well built it was. It's almost like a 10th wonder of the world. I'm surprised it isn't. Anyways, they were called in by Slavic tribes because the Slavic tribes were constantly warring with one another. Okay? And Rurik, with a bunch of Vikings who were just more intelligent, more organized, more productive, better builders, better warriors, organized and provided law enforcement to prevent these warring parties from continuing to engage in civil wars with one another. Okay? And in doing so, he united all of these tribes in Northwest Russia, modern Northwest Russia, near St. Petersburg. And then he sent his buddy Oleg down to Kiev to do the same, to found modern day Russia between Novgorod and Kiev. That's how Russia was founded. What people don't understand about Vladimir Putin is that Putin is from St. Petersburg. Okay. So because, 1,000, 1,500 years later, particularly a lot of the Russians in St. Petersburg, they're like cousins of Swedes. Okay. There's been at least 6 wars in 1,000 years. There's been 3 wars in the last 250 years between Russia and Sweden. Sweden has won most of those, again, because of the hack, because they just cut off the Gulf of Tonkin. So they just do an embargo. However, obviously today is different. Russia's way more powerful. But my point here is that they're like cousins. They were like engaging in these little petty conflicts over territories, farms, because they were like, it's like family disputes almost. Okay. Now, the Russians inevitably mixed with the Slavs. But in that area of Russia, you have at least 20 to 25% of the ethnic base being Scandinavian, which people don't know. People just are completely oblivious to this. And Putin, the name Putin, just like my name Ferdine, my name means coming with peace, or coming from peace. Fred and peace means Swedish, and N is a translated Latin term into Swedish, which means coming from. My name also is tied to a territory in county in Sweden called Fredingsholt, which is kind of south. They changed it. I think it's like where Malmö is. It's kind of like that southern seaport in Sweden. Anyways, Putin is a name that actually stems from Viking or Swedish or Scandinavian terms. And it's been incorporated into Russian languages and so on and so forth. My point here is that Vladimir Putin is at least 25% Scandinavian, Swedish, and Russians do not give up because they have that Viking warrior gene. They will not give up. They will do whatever it takes to win, and they will hold the line. They are the Vikings are the most hardcore warriors ever to grace this earth. I mean, they've any war that they've basically won, any type of conflict that they've ever been involved with, one way or another. They might lose a battle here or there, but overall they invaded France, Normandy, they beat the Normans, and then they integrated with the Normans there. They were the only nation to conquer England. They conquered large parts of Ireland during that process. They took over Scotland. I mean, but they've also transitioned into a very peaceful group of people. In fact, probably the most peaceful group in Europe in the last 200 years. And that's because of historical knowledge about war. War is evil. War is bad. No one wants war. And you need to avoid war at all costs. And I think Putin, not to say, again, like engaging in this war in Ukraine is evil. I'm not giving him justification for doing so. I'm just saying that he was really pissed about Zelensky killing people in Donetsk and Donbass, because he was literally sending guided missiles into markets, killing innocent women and children and men, elderly people. Nothing was being done. And they were trying to trigger a wider conflict with Russia. So Putin had to stand up and do something. I mean, what, are you just going to allow innocent people to be killed? So I don't know how God is going to judge Putin, but all I know is that he's not going to give up. He will do anything to win here. And he's very, very intelligent in the way that he's going about this. Very iterative. You know, one of the things about Hitler and Napoleon, and the major reasons they lost, was because they tried to do way too much too quickly. And you see Putin very, very iteratively do things. Small steps.
First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should
Tucker
know.
Carlson
They're
is actually
paying
Swedish,
for much of it.
which he occasionally, like he very rarely alludes to, but
in ways they might not fully yet perceive.
So he's actually
the war in Ukraine is a human disaster.
You know, and I've been watching a lot of Russian live streams over the past 2 years. I mean, Russia is just an amazingly beautiful place. And a lot of their infrastructure is way more up to date than ours. It's just way cleaner. I mean, you never see like just a bunch of protests or crimes taking place. You don't see drug addicts in the street. I mean, they clean that stuff up really quickly. And I'm sure that their percentage is much lower here than in the US. Like their streets are super clean. People are like, you know, I mean, they're honest, and they potentially could be brutally honest, but they're like overall like very, you know, organized, nice people. It seems like welcoming. You could walk on the street without being fearful.
Sure. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history altering.
I was reading that the Ukrainian military put out a hit on Tucker Carlson for going and doing this interview with Vladimir Putin. Again, I don't know about the factual underpinnings of that. There were rumors. I don't know if they were just saying that in order to hype this interview or what, but I mean, just this is a supposed Western democratic regime, and they're trying to terrorize a reporter for going and interviewing a president. It's just beyond understanding.
Developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky.
Very few Russians.
We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify. A lot of his interviews, I don't know, I can't recall one specifically, but it seems like any campaign is like coordinated with Congress. He goes in, meets with Nancy Pelosi when Nancy Pelosi was still in office, or he meets with Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer like rolls him out on red carpet. It's all coordinated. Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict.
Tried. I think it's really about getting.
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is.
That's really important. That's really important that free speech cannot be taken away. It's given to us by God. These courts, they issue these gag orders to try and take away your right to free speech. Obviously, I'm cautious about what I say just because I don't want to do a bunch of paperwork. But, when rubber meets the road and they try and censor you or silence you and say that you cannot say what you truly believe, which I have a city council right now. I don't even want to get into it, but I'm dealing with people who are basically, so many people try and hide information, and they don't. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why, because I've been attacked so much in the mainstream media, in alternative media, on 4chan. Like, I've been basically attacked everywhere. Okay. There's been a lot of hit pieces written about me, and I've been fair game. I mean, I've received thousands of death threats. In fact, I just received like hundreds of, if not thousands of death threats a couple months ago. No one's here protecting me, but the moment that you talk about them to criticize them, boom, they'll try and censor you. So
the White House,
it's our
birthright. But they're trying anyway.
They'll make up any false allegation against you that they possibly can.
Years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages.
My point is, like, it doesn't matter what people say about you. And it shouldn't matter. You should be able to understand that people can criticize you. Especially if you're a public official. I never go after anybody who's not a public official.
And then leak the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir
here's
Putin.
what happened to me with Allison Greenfield. Those fuckers, I mean, it's so incredibly corrupt. They tried to take out search warrants against my professional activities to try and disrupt my life, to try and like destroy any ability for me to like have a livelihood at all. They can do whatever they want. I don't care. I've done nothing wrong. And for them to do that in order to censor someone like me, who's really just a no one, you know, I'm a nobody, shows you how evil and corrupt, you know, their intentions truly are. And if they can get away doing this to Tucker Carlson or, you know, President Trump, they can easily do it to me. And if they can easily do it to me, who's basically like some rogue, you know, rebel out in the middle of nowhere, they can do this to anybody who's even less sophisticated than me. And maybe I am somewhat knowledgeable and sophisticated in the legal system. Okay, maybe I am. I'm not saying I am totally. Maybe I know my way around a few things, okay? And I, you know, just like Vladimir Putin, I'm willing to defend myself, not to compare myself to him. It's a bad comparison. I'd rather compare myself to a pacifist like Martin Luther King, who's willing to do anything to protect, you know, my ability to continue to utilize my fundamental rights.
We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited,
no, that's
on our
interesting.
website.
So Tucker said that. I mentioned that the other day when I was streaming. I was like, I wonder if Tucker Carlson is going to put this behind a paywall, what the strategy is there. And I said, you know, I think that Tucker Carlson will probably just put it on his regular X channel because that's, you know, this is an interview with Vladimir Putin. Everybody needs to see this. This is a matter of public concern.
Carlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform X, and we're grateful for that.
Elon Musk is really in the thick of it
Western
too now.
governments,
You know,
by
the more I
contrast, will
think about
certainly
it,
do
and
their
the
best.
fact that his family is from Minnesota, it just makes a lot of sense. Like, he is a Minnesotan just like me, through and through, and you know, just willing to do anything to ensure that everybody has access to those fundamental rights and that we're not being invaded by a foreign power, in this case, illegal immigrants. But like, Elon Musk is under attack, more so than probably anyone else at this point. Even President Trump, I might argue. I don't know. Maybe a little bit less. I don't know. But it's definitely in the same region of tyranny that he's facing. And I'm just, the more I see it, the more I understand, and the more that I realize that, you know, Elon Musk is doing the right thing by fighting this. And you can't fully trust, you know, everything, you know. But I don't know. You're seeing good things.
To censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can.
You know,
and then,
the other interesting
like a
thing
free
here is,
citizen
so
and
Tucker Carlson always dresses in this kind of like business attire with the dress shirt and then the kind of the sweater on top of it, like what do you call that type of sweater? A cashmere sweater on top of it, and then he's got like the goose down kind of winter jacket, light winter jacket.
Not a slave.
Why didn't Tucker Carlson just like chill out, you know, wear some non-business attire?
You can
maybe it's very like preppy American style clothing, you know. It's like he's showing up to a business meeting or something. I get it. You're interviewing Vladimir Putin, though. You kind of got to dress up, but got to wear a suit.
You can decide for yourself. Thanks.
Cat Turds got 92. No, Tucker Carlson has 92 million views just on the promo for it. Incredible. All right, this is a good one. This is a fantastic video. We got to play this. This is This is like every single young middle-aged woman in this country right now. Symbolic. And it's really symbolic of this entire country. Just watch it.
Hang loose right now. Front wheel is definitely out. Let's see what this person's smoking.
So the wheel.
Hang loose right now.
Sparking.
Front wheel is definitely out. Let's see what this person's smoking.
So she must have hit something, right? She must have hit something, and the wheel came off, but she didn't know, or she continued to drive. Look at that. Look at that. Like, there's no way that the wheel or the tire would come off unless she hit something. There's obviously the fender here is bent upward.
What are you doing? Get off the road. Miss, get out of the car.
Yeah.
Are you on drugs right now?
No, not at all. My car gave out. I mean, I had somebody help me before, and apparently the brake did not stop.
Do you know you're driving on three wheels?
I don't feel any sympathy for this woman at all. Usually I do. I have some. I really don't. Just watch.
Right now, your wheel's completely out. You just crashed into this gentleman right here.
Crashed into this
You're
guy.
a hazard. You're on the freeway.
80 miles on the freeway, on the three wheels.
I'm going to trade in.
You need to get out of the car.
I will.
Just get out of the car, miss.
Leave the car.
You're on drugs right now. You're on painkillers. There's
So leave
yes,
the
you
car.
are.
Oh my God.
You are on some drugs right now.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Put your car.
Her arms are shaking. Look at that. Look at that. Fell out of her pocket. Oxys, I don't know. Fentanyl mixed with oxys. So she was impaired and she hit something.
Hang
I
loose.
will say one time I was trying to rush to work, and for some reason I didn't. And I don't use any drugs or anything. I won't even tell the story. I left. I don't want to make myself look foolish, but I didn't do anything close to anything like this, but I left like a towel or something. And well, I'm lying. Here's what I did. I'll just be honest. I was in a rush to get to work, and for some reason it was like early in the morning and I had to fill up. So I went to the gas station, filled up, went into the gas station to buy something. I think I bought an energy drink. Forgot that I had filled my tank up, got back into my car. So it was that intermediary step of going into the gas station where I totally lost track of what I was doing. And I just drove off, and this must have been like 15 years ago. And the pump head came off. And it was hanging from the gas tank in my car. The same car I have now, actually. And I was on 94, I was driving. And I didn't even hear it. It was like flapping against the side. And someone did the same thing. They pulled up and they're like, hey, you have a part of the gas pump in your gas tank, like hanging out. I pulled onto the shoulder and I'm like, oh my fucking God. Put it in the trunk, went to work, went back to the gas station after work, gave him the pump head, explained the situation, because I was like, what do I do? Because, I'm not sure if that pump head, because I didn't want to steal from the gas station. It was inadvertent. It was an accident. I didn't know how much that was, if it was like $100, $200, whatever. So I brought it back to the gas station. I gave it to him. I didn't explain what happened, but I did give him the gas head thing back. And then I just drove off, and I was like, that's all I can do. I can see where you could do it accidentally, but she clearly hit something, and this was like much different than just, an accident. California, probably. Oh, now he's questioning 9/11? You're welcome. Keep Mongolian. General Flynn questions the official story of 9/11. This is actually really big news. Holy shit. Whoa. General Flynn is actually questioning 9/11? Woo. Man, oh man. Hot times. What?
Of what we are up against. And what we're up against is a globalist takeover.
So General Michael Flynn, the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, questions the official narrative of 9/11. This should be like, you know, front page news.
Of all of the world's nation states run by an elite body of people out of these essentially private institutions like the World Bank, the World Health Organization, World Trade Organization. So these are
You know, it's interesting too that because they prosecuted Flynn in the false statements case, and it was originally kind of stemming from the meeting with the Russian ambassador before Trump took office, and they claimed that he violated not the Foreign Agency Act, but the other one from like 100 years ago. And they said that it was like treason or something, but they knew that they couldn't get him on that, so they just got him on the false statements charges. And he really understood how corrupt our system is going through that entire process. And so now it's like, holy shit, he's had kind of this epiphany about how this entire scheme operates.
Of people that are unelected, and this plan has been in place for a long time.
It's true.
And it was actually from the U.S. perspective, the timeline was 8 years of Barack Obama. Then the next plan was to have Hillary Clinton in there 8 years. And frankly, we would not have the rise of independent voices like we have. We would have we wouldn't know each other. We wouldn't know any of what we know had Donald Trump not gotten into office. I mean, that's the crazy thing that, and you know, people can.
There was a lot of corruption early on that was exposed. For example, spying on his campaign, abuse and misuse of the FISA court, some of that in the Russia collusion, Russiagate, Russia. That was kind of like the early smoke signals that kind of illustrated some of the corruption. And of course, now we've seen the successive, pattern showing all of this at work.
Call me whatever they want to call me, but we have to question everything. I mean, even just talking about some of the stuff in the last piece there. I mean, we should.
What happened with
the assassinations of the '60s?
How come the federal court has basically made Saudi Arabia immune in all these lawsuits? For all these 9/11 victims who aren't getting paid, who should be getting paid and should be able to sue Saudi Arabia.
Kennedys, John and Robert. Martin
Important
Luther King.
questions.
I mean, others. We should relook all of these things. And what happened on building number 7? All of these things need to be
controlled
re-examined.
implosion.
And I do believe that
1,500 architects said there's no way that building wasn't a controlled implosion.
A government that's in control of the country, that is for the people of our country, that stands on the shoulders of the great leaders of the history of our country, the people of this country will stand.
I gotta say, like, you see so many different professions now operate in the alternative media. Like General Flynn is a former military officer, general. You see, J.P. Spears, he's carpenter, plumber, You see a lot of other different types of people, like, Jason Burmis, who's, speaking of 9/11, exposed a lot of the 9/11 stuff, especially with Building 7. Burmis is like a former bartender. You see people like me, I'm a software developer. Software developers are really the dumbest people on the planet. They really are, especially the liberal ones. But they're like the ones who are just willing just not to go along with it. I've noticed. They're probably the most. I've seen a lot of ethics actually with software developers. I don't know if this is similar to other professions, but they're just like, whatever, it's bullshit. I'm not going to do anything. Unless, of course, they're liberal and they want to censor with big tech and that whole thing. But, you know, I don't, and maybe it's just all people. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I work in this sort of tribe. But these professional tribes, I think probably
Them. And
more and
we
more
can get
people
through this,
now.
but we have to do this. We have to do this. It's like a cleansing. And from
Yeah, so changing topics a little bit. General Flynn, I think this is great. Like, expose all the shit. Like, Rudy Giuliani should also get in on this. He should expose everything he knows about 9/11, particularly considering that he was a mayor of New York City during that time. He did a segment on me a couple months ago. If I had any recommendation, he got disbarred by Kevin Doyle. Again, Kevin Doyle had to ship it to DC because he fucked the case up. He's trying to sanction and suspend, admonish Jersey Queen Alina Habba right now, Mommy Habba. If I were Rudy Giuliani, I would expose all of this shit. All of it. Internal emails he's got. Fuck them. Those assholes fucked him over. They took his retirement from him. I mean, he forgot to apply for retirement benefits when he left the city, and he could have got $8,000 a month or something. He doesn't have access to that, and it wouldn't have been able to be taken away by any of these courts with the defamation judgment that he's got against him now. I would be, if I were Rudy Giuliani and I was giving him any advice whatsoever, expose it all, bro.
time to time, from time to time,
Expose it, just like Flynn is doing.
nations need to be cleansed.
There's nothing that can be held back now. Plus, Rudy Giuliani, you know, he's not a spring chicken, you know? He's getting a little bit older.
And this is our,
You know, Rudy Giuliani's got to think about his son, you know, and his family and stuff. Like what kind of retaliation they would probably engage in against his family. But so I see where he's kind of got that in his thought process. But I would just be, you know, internal email. I'm sure he's got emails. I'm sure he's got hard drives.
our period of cleansing that we are going to have to go through, because we cannot continue down this path that we're going
I like
down
that.
right now.
Cleansing. True. Okay. That is correct. The media doesn't worry about whether kids are being abused and exploited. They only worry that you might find out about it. That's why they attack real reporters like libs of TikTok. True. Typical public officials. They don't actually care about the underlying problem. They just want to make sure that no one knows about it. Okay. Another good one. This is your average American woman who's about 25, 27.
She never turned a car before. Oh gosh, just right here.
It's right there.
Just turn it in.
Never know if these are scripted, if this is actually real or not. Could just be fake, but
I feel like we need to help.
Look at that. Seems totally real. This is the average IQ of a young American woman in this country. What place are those from?
Oh, here we
So
go.
I can't, I don't know. Maybe
I'm
like
gonna go help her.
Pennsylvania or
I gotta
something?
go help her. This is, hold on, I'm gonna get out and go help her.
I wouldn't help her. Fuck her.
Wait.
Oh, her friend is gonna tell her.
She'll help her.
Her friend is like, "What the hell are you doing? Is she high?" You're like,
Tell her to bring
the
her
entrance
here.
is on
Tell
the
her to
other
bring her
side,
around.
bro.
Bring her
No way.
around.
They're both gonna do it. Oh my god. This is like average IQ of an American
Not a
female.
chance. There's two of them.
Oh, surely the other way, right?
Oh yeah, surely the other way. Well, it's gonna do it. I mean.
No wonder we need DEI. No wonder they need to be immune from criticism.
We gotta go help them. Oh, they're gonna break it. Oh my god. They hit my car. Oh my god. This is like
Three Stooges.
Look at this. Look at this. They're raising the entire
Are they trying to go under
structure
it?
to go under it.
What is... How many... Well, they're not both blondes. How many middle-aged humans does it take to return a cart?
This can't be real. This has got to be scripted.
Okay, they've got to get this. I got to go help. I got to go help. Like, this
You're
is
saying
too
Don't do it.
good.
He's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Because then you become part of the problem. Oh my God. And here's the other thing. Like, okay, why not just leave it there?
All right. Should I go help?
There's another minute.
I
of
gotta
this.
go help. I got it. This is, oh my God. Oh, this is too good. This is too good.
This is like better than a porn video here. No fucking way. No fucking way.
Don't hit the cart. Don't hit the cart. Don't hit the cart. Don't
No
hit the cart. Don't hit the
fucking way.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go help. I gotta go help. Yo. Hey, put that down. Put that down. Hey, what are you doing?
He's trying to put the cart back.
Why? Why are you going this way?
What?
Y'all just take it over here and just return it like a normal human.
There's an opening on that.
Yeah, there's an opening on this side.
That's why maybe it's a
You
scripted
return
video.
it going this direction.
Never know.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Here, come here, y'all. Look. Yeah.
Yeah, women,
Have you opened
women
the grocery store?
can, women can win wars. They can serve in combat. Women can be electricians. They can be plumbers. They can work on oil rigs. I mean, clearly they have the organizational capabilities, the analysis, all of the skills necessary to perform these jobs. You can clearly see that from this video. This is like one good reason why women need men.
Adam would stop it. Thank you.
And they just leave and they don't say thank you. I mean, she said thank you, but she didn't really mean it. She was just like, whatever. Oh, you got your boy Adam Kinzinger from Ohio, probably from his beach house or something. He's not wearing, you notice he's not wearing a jacket here or anything. It's cold in Ohio right now. So he's outside on a porch. So he's probably got some money from some defense contractor to buy a beach house in Florida, wherever he's at.
Look, I have one way to guarantee that the vote for Ukraine aid gets put on the floor and very soon. Out
Why
of
does he
200
want
and some
money for
members,
Ukraine?
GOP members
Why
of the
does he
House,
want
it
money
only
for
takes
Israel?
3 or 4 to commit to vote against every
They're all
rule.
Democrats, man. The Republicans and the Democrats are both awful. I don't trust Republicans. I don't trust Democrats. I don't trust any of them.
Rule is what allows floor action to even happen. To commit to vote against every rule until the speaker agrees to put Ukraine aid on the floor for an up or down vote. That's it.
How many drinks
Simply
has
put
Kinzinger
the
had
aid
right
bill
here?
on the floor and allow the members of Congress
eyes
to
are
actually
bloodshot.
have their say. They know
You
it'll
can see.
pass, by the way.
Look at this.
So only
Look at his eyes are clearly bloodshot. If I could zoom in, you could clearly see that.
3 or 4 House Republicans have to agree to take down every rule until that agreement is made and it's ironclad. This is what the Freedom Caucus does all the time, and it's frankly why the Freedom Caucus is successful. Until
Kinzinger
people on the
is a
other
little
end of that
bitch.
argument are willing to fight by the same rules or lack of rules that the Freedom Caucus fights by,
He's a little
they
bitch.
will run the table every time. The best analogy I use is if everybody in a room has a hand grenade, the one that's willing to actually pull the pin.
Why do these guys just constantly want war? I just don't get it. I really don't. And I love fighting. I love it. I love fighting. I'll admit it. I'm not a lover. I'm a fighter. I love arguing, and I'm talking about peacefully fighting. Let me just be clear about that. Like, I love arguing. I love competition. The analogy of fighting, right? Not war or physical conflict. I love it. That's exactly why I am so anti-war, because I know how dangerous it is. Somehow I just know that. It's like a spiritual lesson. You know, I don't know. My mom, when she'd get wacky, and she didn't really get wacky, I'm just being facetious. I mean, she never had any mental issues. But she would jokingly say, like, in a past life, you know, I was a Luftwaffe pilot, or she'd always say that, actually. Because I'd always have these dreams that I was a Luftwaffe pilot as a kid. I actually still get them. And that my wingman and I had were victorious in almost every battle, and I messed up once and they got taken down. They crashed. And I had like a bunch of medals on me. But anyways, this recurring dream I have always happens whenever I have like really stressful or tense situations pop up for some reason. So my mom always said that I was like a Luftwaffe pilot in a past life, and I don't know why she said that. But anyways, it's ridiculous to say that. It's wacky, but I love, there's something I love about war. I love war films. I love World War II history. I've read a lot of books about Hitler. I've read a lot of books about World War II. Like my high school history teacher was the son of Field Marshal von Paulus, who surrounded Stalingrad, I think. And so he had some interesting stories. I know that Svetlana Stalin was not far away in Prairie Center, Wisconsin or something, where she was in a nursing home. And I think he tried to invite her in for a discussion one day, because it'd be kind of interesting, you know. But I think the main takeaway is that war's evil, you know? Like, you can't, it's not even a last resort. You can only do it in defense of innocent people who can't protect themselves in very limited situations. And I think that's the argument in the defense that Vladimir Putin is going to put up here with the Ukraine situation. But it's been used and abused so much with the American police state, with dumb people like Adam Kinzinger, who just constantly want to go to war everywhere. They want to fund all these wars, and I just don't understand it. It's like he's missing some, like, there's something missing in his soul, or he's missing a soul. I don't know. Like, people with souls, like, they understand the historical, like, there's some Holy Spirit thing here that, like, the only one who can wage war is Jesus. When Jesus comes back, according to the Bible, he will wage war. And until that point, we cannot wage war. That's my understanding of life in general. So I don't understand why he thinks that he can kind of usurp or circumvent that power in order to declare war on certain groups of people and constantly advocate for funding it.
And drop the grenade is the most powerful of all these grenade wielding people. So the Republicans,
and you know,
all
the other
the
thing
ones
my
that
mom used to
support
say, the other thing my mom used to say is, because I had these dreams when I was a child, I still have them, is that whatever problems I have, she said this when I was young too, and it's interesting that it actually turned out to be kind of true. Whatever problems I have in this life will be retaliation for my wrongdoings in a past life, and it will always come from Germans. She said it would always come from Germans, and it's probably something to do with you letting down your wingman in combat. And I didn't put all that together until, I know it's kind of crazy to talk about, it's wacky, especially on a stream, but whatever. It's just weird how that stuff spiritually works out.
Ukraine aid, only 3 or 4 of them have to commit to vote against every rule until the aid package is put on the floor, and it will be put on the floor for an up or down vote. Look at all the deals that were cut on Speaker McCarthy's behalf to become Speaker, on Speaker Johnson's behalf to become Speaker. This is a really
he's definitely
minor thing to acquiesce to.
tipsy here.
Quite honestly, it will give Speaker Johnson the cover he needs to put this on the floor.
Drink,
so call the members of Congress the Republicans, and ask them to commit to vote against any rule until Ukraine aid passes or is put on the floor for a vote.
Fucking asshole. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Let me check comments and then we'll close this out. Do we have any comments? No, we do not. I will see you players later. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Thanks for watching Command HQ with Brock and Agent X. We'll see you next time.